Crosby Field, Cincinnati.
Yep.
That's an embankment. The outfielder played right at the base of the embankment. It wasn't very far. It was like 328? As I recall, 328? No, 323 it says. I thought it said 328. 390 to right here. Right field had an embankment out there. From the infield, it went down. And they had a big flood there many, many years ago, and they had pictures of ball players in a rowboat out here in the outfield. But the left fielder played right at the base of this slope. And so instead of having a warning track, you'd have to run back uphill, and there would have been a lot of players who would go back uphill and they'd fall down. We had Bob Bailey, our left fielder, had trouble one day, and so the next day Gene Mock had him hitting fly balls going back up the hill. And so he worked out pretty good until the game started. About the 7th inning, there's a fly ball hit to him, and he went back up the hill, and it looked like he was doing okay, and then all of a sudden came back down the hill. He fell down, the ball hit him right in the rear end. So it ended up being extra bases. He worked on going up the hill, but he didn't work very hard on coming back down the hill. And they also, here in the scoreboard, Cincinnati Reds used to have a guy up here with binoculars, and they tried to steal the signs, and there was an opening here, and they put a towel up there in one of the holes so you could see where it's a fastball or curveball. We changed that real quick. We called for, catcher called for a curveball, and he threw a fastball and chased him out from underneath his helmet, and that was the last time they took the signs. They didn't want to do that anymore. But it was an interesting old ballpark. The clubhouse was small, did not have air conditioning, hot, humid days. I had a fan going, and you'd go take your shower, and you'd still be all sweaty and all hot and everything. But this is a great old ballpark. Good ballpark to hit in, short center field fence. Can't pitch away from center field. Duke Snyder hit a lot of home runs in this ballpark.
Is this the only ballpark that had the embankment that went all the way around?
Yeah, this is the only one that had the slope. And the outfielder, I said, all the way around the outfielder played basically at the base of the slope. So anything he hit over your head, you knew you had to go back uphill. And it's tough to look over your shoulder and run uphill.
Extra challenge.
All right.
Okay, moving on.
You know Yankee Stadium.
We know Yankee Stadium, the real Yankee Stadium. We know this one well.
Yeah. Polo Grounds. Polo Grounds, a great ballpark to play in. Really a great ballpark. Across the river from Yankee Stadium. It was a horseshoe shaped stadium. And down the line was only like 252 feet. And when that shot heard around the world, when Bobby Thompson hit it off of Ralph Branca, he hit the second deck, and that second deck hung out about 15 feet. And so the ball was only hit maybe 300 feet, maybe, if that far. And it just caught the upper deck here. In right center field, left center field, it was big. 425, 430 out there in the alleys. Center field was 475. The clubhouses were in center field. And the Giants used to have a guy up there with the binoculars like they did at the Crosby Field. And there'd be, on the hit sign, there would be one light on the hit sign. They would have one bulb that would turn on that you could see your fastball or curveball. But a big ballpark, the outfielders bunched you. Because the ball hit right down the line, the ball would carom and ricochet into right to you. So if you hit the ball down the line, it's tough to hit a double. Not that you couldn't, but it was kind of tough to hit a double, simply because of the carom to the outfielder. Also, not many balls hit on the roof, just a few of them hit there. I think there were only 3 balls were hit in the bleachers in center field over the 475 sign. I think Aaron did it. Lou Brock did it, and I want to say Joe Adcock was the other one that did that. But great ballpark to play in. I loved it. I loved it here. I don't think I ever played a series here in which I didn't hit a home run. But it was only 250 feet down the line, and all you had to do is pull a fly ball. You didn't have to hit it very far at all.
That had to look close. How close did that look?
Well, right down the line was close, but as soon as you looked out there where the outfielders were playing, it was, like I said, 425, 430 out there in right center. I know Duke hit one in the upper deck in the right field one day, and he had hit that thing 500 and some feet. He launched that thing. I tried to, off of Bob Miller one day, I tried to hold up on a pitch, and I popped it up down the left field line, and the scoreboard on the second deck up here. The ball landed about 3 or 4 feet fair, and I tried to hold up on it, and Bob Miller cussed me out all the way around the bases. And I don't blame him, because the ball only went like 250 feet. It ended up being a home run. So
What was the atmosphere like there?
the atmosphere was great. Yankee fans, the Giant fans, they're great. And of course, you know, in New York, at that particular time, it was almost like you asked someone, "What are you, a Jew, Protestant, Catholic? What are you? What are you? Are you a Yankee fan, Dodger fan, you're a Giant fan?" It didn't make any difference. But I mean, that's how it was broken down. It was almost like a religion in New York at that time. And they had great teams, of course, the Giants and the Dodgers and the Yankees. A funny thing here in the Polo Grounds, when the Mets finally came in, they had a game in the Polo Grounds where the shortstop, and his name, oh gosh, I'm out of time trying to think of his name right now, but Richie Asprin was a center fielder, and the shortstop, who didn't speak any English, kept running into some of the outfielders on pop-ups into shallow left center field and left field and everything, and put him in the hospital. So Richie says, "I don't want to go in the hospital." So he worked out the deal with the shortstop, and she would say, "Yolo Tango." Yolo Tango means "I have it," so he could run the shortstop off of the pop-up. Sure enough, there was a ball hit up high in the air, and Richie came in, and the shortstop went out, and Richie called for it, "Yolo Tango, Yolo Tango." And he's about ready to catch it, and the left fielder ran into Richie. And he says, "I don't know what Yolo Tango means. I don't speak Spanish." But anyway, that was a funny story about that. One of my favorite stories about this ballpark is when the Dodgers went back to the Polo Grounds after they left Brooklyn. And the first game we played in, game started at 8 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, when they opened the gates, they had 50,000 people, and just about what you could see right here. It was full. And the clubhouses were out here in center field. The Dodgers, or the visiting team, was on the left, and the Giants were on the right. And you walk down these stairs. And I went out in front of Duke Snider, and I just want to see the reaction of the fans for them to look at number 4. And I walked out in the center field. Of course, they didn't know who I was, and they booed the heck out of me. And Duke came out, and they recognized him right away because he had that silver hair and all. And the ovation started. And it took Duke about 20 minutes to get from center field. He talked to Richie Asprin for a while, and the fans were applauding. And by the time he got near the dugout, it took almost 20 minutes. And when he got near the batting cage, it was just about the time we started hitting, it was basically a standing ovation. And it was probably one of the best ovations I've heard any person ever get. And then when they took batting practice, the extra guys only had 5 minutes. And somebody got in the batting cage before Duke, and they took their 3 or 4 swings and got out. And then Duke got in and started taking batting practice. The first ball he hit was a ground ball, a second, nothing. Then he popped one of the cage, and the third one he hit out. And the entire ballpark went crazy. That was in batting practice.
Wow.
So it turned out where Duke ended up taking the rest of the batting. He hit about 5 or 6 balls out, and after batting practice, ran around the bases. And it's the only time I've ever seen batting practice get a standing ovation.
That's amazing. You had to run around the bases as
Yeah.
he was, oh wow. That's a special story.
It was the same thing in that game where we're winning, and we had a pretty good lead. We're leading like 9-1 or something like that. And it's the only game I ever asked to come out of, because for 9 innings, the fans kept hollering, "We want Duke. We want Duke." And I went to Alston. I said, "I'm leading the 9th inning off." I said, "Hey, would you let Duke hit for me?" And he says, "No, I need you out there for defense." And I didn't like that. And so when I went up to hit, I got the biggest boo I'd ever done, because the fans knew that I should have come out of the game, and Duke should have been batting for me, in the lineup at that time. But I didn't know at that time is that Alston and Duke had a little feud going, and so Alston just wasn't going to put him in. And that to me was a bad thing. wish he would have done it.
It's a shame.
All right, let's try another one.
Okay.
That's Wrigley Field. Everybody knows that one. Camden Yard, you were just there. No last time stadium. Nothing special about that place. This is the old ballpark in Boston. I never played here, but this is the old ballpark where the Boston Braves used to play. In fact, the football stadium is still part of this field, and I think one of the bleachers, and I don't remember which one, is still used as part of the football stadium there at Boston College. So that's obviously right there in Boston, and the only ballpark that remains now is, of course, Fenway Park. But here it is, one very far to right field, Boston Braves. These guys eventually went on to Milwaukee, from Milwaukee to Atlanta. But they had a pretty good ball club. Looked like be a good ballpark to hit in.
Yeah, pretty open.
Yeah. All right, here we are. This is old Shibe Park in Philadelphia. It's where I played my first major league game, and interesting ballpark. Lousy clubhouse. The clubhouse was a very narrow, little tiny place where, good golly, it's about a third of the size of the clubhouses there at Safeco Field. Interesting thing about this ballpark is in right field. That is, you can see the wall. It was about right around 17, 18 feet high, but all this up in here was corrugated. So when the ball hit it, you couldn't tell which direction it was going to go. And so that made it kind of tough. And in addition to that, we used to have our bullpen down here into the right field corner. And when we had men on base, the guys in the bullpen could tell whether the ball was going to go up against the fence or not. So if there was any doubt in their mind, we had one guy down there that he'd wave a towel. If it looked like the ball was going to go up against the fence, he'd wave a towel, runners would take off. We did that a few times, and then Gene Mock saw what we were doing, and it was the next series they switched the bullpens on us. It's 440 feet straight away center field, and I remember one of the first games I played in, I was at third base, and Big Frank Howard was the hitter. And third base coach told me, now listen, tag up on a fly ball. I think there was either one out. And he says, tag up on a fly ball. Well, Frank launched one. In fact, he hit it on top of the roof, but I still went back to tag up as if I couldn't figure out that ball was leaving the yard. And he hit it on top of the roof and here there at the ballpark. Wow. But it was tough playing right field because down here below, it was just a wooden fence. That was fine, but when you got about 9 feet off the ground, that corrugated thing, boy, that ball bounced all over the place, and you never knew what direction it was going to go. Played a game here. Duke Snyder hit one over the transformer out here, and boy, that's a long way. That's a long way. McCovey hit one over the scoreboard. That's a long way. And it was in the 1966, we ended the season, we had to play a doubleheader to finish the season, and we needed to win one game of the doubleheader for us to go to the World Series. In the first game, Don Drysdale was pitching, and if we win, then Koufax is going to open the World Series in 1966. And we were getting beat 2-0, and in the 7th inning, I hit a 3-run homer to give us the lead, and then Gene Mock brought starting pitcher Chris Short out of the bullpen to pitch against us, and he gave us a rough time. The Phillies come back and win 4-3. And then in the nightcap, where we have to win now, Koufax has to pitch. Jim Bunning is on the mound for the Phillies, and he's a 19-game winner. He wants to win 20, so you know how much he's bearing down. And we had a 6-0 lead going into the 9th inning. The Phillies scored 3 runs off of Koufax. They have bases loaded, and Dick Allen, their power hitter, is up there at the plate, pops up in the infield. We win. And now we don't have anybody to start the 1966 World Series because we had Drysdale Koufax pitched Sunday. The World Series is going to start on Tuesday. We had an 8-hour flight from this ballpark back to L.A., and when we got to L.A., we were done. We're all out of gas. And Drysdale started on 1 day's rest, and the rest of it is the Orioles beat us 4 straight. And I'm not taking anything away from the Orioles because they had a heck of a ball club. They were really good, but we were done. But this is where I played my first major league game. Never forget it.
If you're 4 for 23 or
Never played there. That's the old Washington ballpark. Oh, the only thing about the old Washington ballpark?
Can't be 417 because,
This is the old Washington ballpark. It was 400 feet down the left field line, and there was four big numbers, 4 something out here in center field. And the Yankees one time had an argument. The guys were sitting in the bullpen out there and down the line. And the argument was, do you think anybody could hit the ball that could hit the scoreboard? And the consensus was, no. About 10 days later, Mantle hit one over it. That's the 565 that Mickey hit. But everybody, the consensus was, no, nobody's going to be able to hit a ball that's going to hit the scoreboard up here at all. And the Mick launched one through the uprights and he hit it over.
3 points for that, right?
Yeah. I don't know how many runs it counted, but he hit it over. Red Patterson, who eventually became the director of public relations for the Dodgers, he's the one that went out there and marked it off, because he went out there and there was some kids that were out there beyond the fence, and they said, "Did you see where the ball landed?" And the kid said, "Yeah, it landed right here." So he just marched it back to where the wall was. And that's how they figured the 565. But this was an interesting ballpark.
It's a great story.
Ebbets Field. Ebbets Field. I wish I could have played there. Never played a game there. Never played a game there whatsoever. They had a short right field fence. It's only 296 feet down the line. The furthest point in the ballpark was 397. This is Flatbush Avenue out here. And they had the screen, and of course Duke. A lot of guys hit so many balls out of this ballpark. They had the Symphony Band, Symphony, the Symphony Band, and they would play as the opposing manager would walk out to the field. And if you walk slower, they played slower, and there was no way you'd get around it. You walk faster, they played faster. And had Chester Hilda she had like a cowbell. And she had a voice that you could hear all over the ballpark. And she would holler and scream at the opposing players. And it was a special little old ballpark. Unfortunately, Walter O'Malley owned the ball club and wanted a larger stadium. This only held about 34,000. And they needed to generate some more money because the players were making more and more money. Yeah, I guess the highest paid player on the team was making 40,000. And that was it, by the way. The most money that Duke Snider made, first of all, let me tell you that he had 5 consecutive years in which he had 40 or more home runs, drove in over 100 runs, and never hit under 300 for 5 consecutive years. The most money Duke ever made was 42.5. Different era, different era. But anyway, regardless, Mr. O'Malley wanted to get a new stadium, and he wanted to build a home stadium. And they had some guy for the city council that was against it, and was against the Dodgers doing anything. And Mr. O'Malley says, "Well, if you don't build it, I'm going to move the team to the West Coast." And the city councilman didn't believe him. Thank goodness they went to Dodger Stadium, and everything turned out just fine. But great team. The boys of summer had a chance there, but great old ballpark.
What was back here underneath?
Back here?
Are those stands?
Those are the stands, and that was the screen.
Okay.
And you had to be alive, like Philadelphia in Connie Mack Stadium. The foul balls, it'd get here in a hurry, and that went straight back. So if you sat along in this area or this area over in here, boy, you had to be alive.
And they didn't have any protection into the dugouts either, it looked like.
No, they didn't have any protection at all.
Keep your head in the game or lose your head pretty much back then.
You better keep it. And the funny thing about it, nobody ever was injured.
Wow.
And even foul balls back up in the upper deck, they had guys that back up here, they used to have their gloves back up in here. So those foul balls, they'd get back up there in a hurry. Great ballpark.